This is you. This is where you are. This is where you want to go. And this is the route that you want to take. In order to get there, first, you have to define this. And in order to define that, you need to tell what it's in the circle. And what is in the circle, let's call it your cosmos, is everything that is not. Your brain's first task is to define what is not. All creatures with a nervous system have to move from here to here, and they have signals that tell them when they're in the wrong path, and signals that tell them when they're in the right path. They also live in a world where all the creatures live, which is the most basic world of all. It's the world of immediate experience. And this is a space that we share with all animals. We all live in an ever-changing world that will never be fully captured by memory or imagination. It's the world where we all die every second and we change into something else every minute. It's the world where a river changes with the passing of time. It's the world where nothing is static. More complex creatures that live in a different context and have to interact with other creatures live in a larger world. They live in a world where they not only have to recognize what it is right now and what it should be, but they also have to recognize who are your friends and who are your foes. This adds more complexity in defining the question of what is not. Who is not neither your friend nor enemy, who is not neither your prey nor predator. What is irrelevant in the social world and what is irrelevant in the world of hunting or protecting your survival. What is not relevant in the world of reproduction. There is a third world, a world that is human, almost only human. It's a world where we share conceptual spaces that live only in our imagination. This is the world where we group ourselves to go somewhere, and we define political spaces and mythical spaces and religious spaces in which to congregate. But we also define what is not our kin, what lies outside. This is the world of the future, where we can actually predict what the future would be. This is a world where only humans are capable to dwell. This is a world where we define who will be a friend in the future, where we define what should be, where we define God. Where we define a Messiah, what should be, what we should be. First, in that third world, there was only one space, community, and what laid outside. Modern times have created different layers for that world. Now we inhabit a very special place that used not to exist, called the individual, a personal space that we share with no one else. And we have another space called family or close relationships. We have other spaces that we call community or moral community. It's a space that we share with other people that think alike, act alike, where we can predict their values and reactions. And then there's another space, let's call it the political space, where we, even though we don't share nor can predict what these people are going to do, we still are in a contract with them. We have some expectations of what to achieve when we set up this political union with them. However, even though we don't understand them, we recognize them as humans and we treat them as such. But then there's what lays outside, those who are less than what we are used to. We treat them differently. We feel for them differently. They are not like us. And because we have to move from here to here, in all our worlds, we have different ethics for each one. We treat ourselves different as how we treat our family, different as how we treat our moral community, different as how we treat the other members of our political unit, and very different for how we treat those who lay outside. Now that we defined what it is not and the worlds in which we exist, now we have to define what it is. This is the round of the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere tells us what it is not, tells what is not relevant and what is relevant, what has a gestalt in it from the information that our senses bring in. But the left hemisphere is the one who's going to tell us what is a tool and what is an obstacle to the goal that we achieve. But not only tells us that, it also helps us abstract what exactly is this goal, even if it is only an immediate goal and not a definite goal. These tools that we have abstracted, these goals that we have abstracted, they have allowed us to master the physical world, to create tools to remove obstacles, and to define ever more clear goals. However, it has also revealed some regularities, some universals that may live outside of our contexts, outside of our cosmos. The most perfectly abstract concepts is math, something that doesn't exist in the real world, but has, if not infinite, universal applications. Physics is a close second. So we live in our worlds and we travel within them. We're also part of larger contexts. And we're also part of collectives. And we tell ourselves where we are by narrating our own lives after the facts, even though we only partially understand what it is not and what it is. Whatever knowledge we have of our contexts, it's abstracted from experience, cumulative experience of many people across time. However, every now and then we extract knowledge not from multiple experience, but from defining a large idea itself. Across history, defining the context and the goals have always been a matter of conflict, war, politics, revolutions. And every now and then, a big idea takes over. However, this is only how we choose to interpret things that already happen. Each view of interpreting history has its advantages and disadvantages. In this site, let's call it Platonic, the history of the world is in reality the history of ideas. What big idea we choose to use to interpret events. And in this one, let's call it Aristotelian, it's a history of people, their decisions, their personal goals, and how they interact, and order emerges. More difficult to interpret and to make sense of, but possibly closer to what actually transpired. However, history is lost in time. In the route of abstracting concepts to define the context in which we move, depending on our character and temperament and ideology, we sometimes choose to blend some of our cosmos in one. For ancient hunter-gatherer tribes, they all moved in a single circle. An individual may be devoted to his community, and nothing else lay beyond that, meaning that whatever political arguments, moral arguments, religious arguments, and conflicts, and even interpersonal conflicts, they all have to be dealt within the structure of the community. At a small scale, might not be such a huge source of conflict, since there are mechanisms readily available, maybe even violent, to prevent unfairness from happening. However, if you translate this to a larger scale, like a city-state like Sparta, a larger state like the Roman conquest, or even a continental state like the Soviet Union, you would be applying or trying to apply the ethics involved in controlling every aspect of someone's life, from a small community into a larger and larger political structure. How do we treat those over which we consider family? We certainly judge them less. We give them plentiful of second opportunities. We even hold them less accountable than we should. We are generous, maybe even generous to their own detriment. There are good parents and there are bad parents. There are good kids and there are bad kids. No single mode of parenting can translate into a decent human. No single form of government, when treating all their citizens as children, will bring heaven on earth. As the organizations got more complex, great men saw some recurring patterns, some rules that differentiated the family interactions from those interactions taking place within the community to those interactions with the outside world. A new code of ethics arose. This allow for the scalability of human interaction. No longer was the community and political union restricted to as far as the leader could reach. Now there was an implicit set of rules that rule the interactions between a moral community and a larger universe of people that agreed to go by this code. Since there have been multiple codes throughout history, it is not entirely clear which ones are the most successful ones, or that all codes are equivalent in their effectiveness to produce peace and prosperity, if that's the goal that you want to reach. When you're in a family or a religious or moral community, you don't need a lawyer. However, when you're inside a political unit interacting with somebody from a different community, or a different family, you need someone that can translate the law that rules those interactions and allows for the political unit to exist between the language that each community and each family uses. What are these rules? What are these codes of ethics that we are somewhat born with? And how can we use them to make our organizations even more perfect? And where does the conflict arise? How do you treat your family? It's different how you treat your moral community. And conflict arises when the moral community is beset by political units. Why is it that when something bad happens in the world, outside your country, sometimes it hurts as if it was across the street? And why is it that when something bad happens in the world across the street, it doesn't feel as much as if it was someone like you who was the victim? Why is it that communities across continents and across countries decide to pursue a policy that affects entire countries? What is it that these people have in common, and leads them to assume that this is a universal value when it's really just a value that they share within a community that crosses political borders? Why is it that you have more in common if you're a city dweller with other city dwellers thousands of miles away than you have in common with someone of your same country 60 miles inland? Sometimes moral communities they believe themselves to be political communities. Their members, they all seek a goal and they see the world with a very particular set of ethics. And even though their pursuit is moral, they call themselves a political party. And instead of using the tools of a community, they use the tools of the political unit that sadly they share with other communities that may not agree with them or may only agree with them partially. Progressivism, neoconservatism, organizations striving for either race equality or supremacy of a race, Islamic religion, the Mormon Church, when it wielded political power, they all try to steer the political apparatus in a direction that they feel is morally superior. However, is apply beyond the boundaries and with the resources that they have to share with others. The reason why political units survive and they can become larger and larger is because the common space is defined is perfectly abstracted and is held sacred by all the communities and by all the individuals. It is met with disgust when a public figure produces a very devout, even if sincere, religious adoration. It is met with disgust when a politician promotes a moral goal only shared by some and shames or insults the others who do not share his political goal, like redistribution of wealth, equality of outcomes, spreading democracy across the world, fighting communism in Southeast Asia, giving public resources to religious minorities, supporting or defunding abortion. And if you are a believer, like some libertarians, that economic resources and private property must be sacred as well, because without them there is no personal liberty and there is no independence, there is no community and there is no individualism, so there is no political union. Then every time that a politician declares that it should be legal to tax or subsidize every aspect of economic activity, or that some economic activity should be regulated or controlled, it is met with disgust as well. In this aspect, immigration does change the character of a nation, because it means that if you introduce a new element, then the character of that which we hold in common has to change. The implications of the common space change. The danger of democracy is when alliances form, momentarily alliances, that is, to try to gain control over the supreme power of the government. The alliances of convenience can put someone or something terrible in power, or something or someone that is ill-defined, but now it has the power, a power so great that it can control everything for everybody. The rule of the majority is also the tyranny of the majority. A lot of the modern questions are not about how to deal with the other, are really about how to deal with the others that look like us. Modern questions in politics are about morality. How should we deal with the others that are like us? However, the solutions apply to everybody. Maybe there is not one solution, but 3, 4, 5, 6 solutions. And we should create space to see these solutions apply to those who want to belong to the group enforcing them, even though the temptation to impose is great.